On October 20th, 2011, the world witnessed one of the most shocking moments of the Arab Spring. A dictator who had ruled Libya for more than 4 decades was captured on the streets of his hometown, beaten, humiliated, and killed. That dictator was Muammar Gaddafi. But what really happened on that day? Was his death an act of spontaneous justice carried out by angry rebels? Or was it a carefully orchestrated operation with international fingerprints all over it? The story of Gaddafi's rise, fall, and violent end is more than just the death of a dictator. It is the story of how one man shaped a nation and how global powers decided his fate. Early life and rise to power. Muammar Gaddafi was born in 1942 in a Bedouin tent near Sirte, Libya. He grew up poor, with no electricity or running water. But from a young age, he was captivated by stories of Arab nationalism and anti-colonial struggle. In 1969, at just 27 years old, Gaddafi led a military coup that overthrew King Idris of Libya. With almost no bloodshed, he declared the birth of a new Libya, one free from monarchy and Western domination. At first, Gaddafi was celebrated. He nationalized Libya's vast oil wealth, kicked out foreign military bases, and used petroleum revenues to build schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. Literacy rates soared, and Libya became one of Africa's wealthiest nations. But the young revolutionary soon turned into an autocrat. The strongman and his vision, Gaddafi created what he called the Jamahiriya, a system of direct democracy where, in theory, the people governed themselves. In reality, it was a system that concentrated enormous power in his own hands. His Green Book laid out his philosophy, a mix of socialism, nationalism, and tribal politics. For some, it was visionary. For others, it was incoherent propaganda. At home, Gaddafi suppressed dissent, imprisoned opponents, and cultivated a personality cult. Abroad, he positioned himself as a champion of pan-Arabism and later pan-Africanism, often clashing with the West. During the 1980s, his Libya was accused of sponsoring terrorism, most infamously the 1988 Lockerbie bombing, which killed 270 people. International sanctions isolated his regime, and Gaddafi became a pariah on the world stage. The shift in the 2000s, by the early 2000s, things began to change. Gaddafi renounced weapons of mass destruction and sought rapprochement with the West. Western leaders, including Tony Blair and Nicolas Sarkozy, shook his hand and welcomed Libya back into international politics. For a time, it looked like Gaddafi had reinvented himself. Oil money flowed again, and Libya's economy stabilized. But beneath the surface, resentment was growing. Many Libyans felt excluded from wealth and political participation. His family, especially his sons, lived in luxury while ordinary people struggled. The Arab Spring reaches Libya. In 2011, protests erupted across the Arab world. Tunisia and Egypt saw their dictators fall quickly. When the wave of revolution reached Libya, Gaddafi responded with brutal force. In February 2011, demonstrations began in Benghazi. Gaddafi's forces cracked down, and violence spiraled into full-scale civil war. Rebels, backed by NATO airstrikes, advanced across the country. By summer, Tripoli fell. Gaddafi fled to his hometown of Sirte, where he made his last stand. October 20th, 2011. The capture. On that day, Gaddafi attempted to escape Sirte in a convoy of vehicles. NATO warplanes targeted the convoy, striking several vehicles and scattering the survivors. Gaddafi took refuge in a drainage pipe on the outskirts of the city, but rebel fighters soon discovered him. The dictator, who had once called himself the King of Kings of Africa, was dragged from hiding, beaten, and shot. Videos circulated online within hours, raw, chaotic, and disturbing. The world saw the once untouchable leader begging for his life, moments before his death, but those images raised as many questions as they answered. Theories and controversies. Officially, Libya's National Transitional Council announced that Gaddafi had died in crossfire during clashes between loyalist fighters and rebels. It was presented as the chaotic but natural result of a collapsing battlefield. Yet, eyewitness accounts and countless videos told a different story. Gaddafi was captured alive, bloodied, dazed, but very much breathing. In one clip, he is heard shouting, "Do you know right from wrong?" as the mob drags him away. Moments later, however, his body appears lifeless. The timeline between capture and death is blurred, raising suspicion. Human Rights Watch later concluded that he was executed after capture. This finding fed theories that his death was not a random act of revenge, but a deliberate killing. But why? Some argue that rebels, many of whom had lost family to Gaddafi's regime, simply wanted justice on the spot. Others claim that foreign powers, particularly NATO members, preferred him dead. A living Gaddafi could have stood trial and possibly revealed sensitive information about secret oil deals, covert weapons agreements, or his financial ties with Western leaders. Leaked diplomatic cables later showed how deeply entangled Gaddafi was with European politicians. Nicolas Sarkozy, then president of France, was accused of receiving millions in illegal campaign financing from Libya. A trial might have exposed all of this. Killing Gaddafi silenced those possibilities forever. The aftermath of his death. When Gaddafi's death was announced, crowds in Tripoli and Benghazi erupted in celebration. To many Libyans, it symbolized the end of an era of dictatorship. Fireworks lit the sky, and chants of victory filled the streets. But underneath the celebrations lurked a dangerous truth. Gaddafi's removal left a power vacuum. His regime had been highly centralized. Every decision, from oil exports to tribal disputes, eventually passed through him. Once he was gone, no strong institutions remained. Libya fractured almost immediately. Rival militias that had fought together against Gaddafi turned their guns on one another. Cities like Misrata, Benghazi, and Tripoli became fiefdoms of competing warlords. Within months, Libya descended into civil war. By 2014, the country had two competing governments, one in the east, one in the west, each backed by different militias and foreign powers. Extremist groups such as ISIS seized the chaos as an opportunity. In 2015, the black flag of the Islamic State flew over Sirte, the very city where Gaddafi was killed. The dream of a democratic Libya collapsed almost as quickly as it began. International fallout. The West, which had intervened under the banner of protecting civilians, faced sharp criticism. NATO's bombing campaign helped topple Gaddafi, but left no plan for rebuilding. Barack Obama later admitted that failing to prepare for the day after in Libya was the biggest mistake of his presidency. For Russia and China, the intervention was proof that Western powers used humanitarian arguments to justify regime change. This shaped their later policies in Syria and beyond. In Africa, many leaders saw Gaddafi's fall as a warning. He had positioned himself as a Pan-African figure, funding projects and even proposing a United States of Africa. With his death, much of that vision collapsed. The legacy of Gaddafi. To this day, Gaddafi remains a deeply polarizing figure. For his supporters, he was the man who gave Libya free healthcare, free education, and one of the highest standards of living in Africa. Under his rule, Libya had minimal foreign debt, subsidized fuel, and housing projects that dwarfed those of neighboring countries. For his critics, he was a tyrant who suppressed dissent, enriched his family, and ruled by fear. His intelligence services carried out disappearances, torture, and assassinations of opponents, both inside Libya and abroad. The truth is that both versions are accurate. Gaddafi built modern Libya, but he also destroyed its institutions by concentrating everything around himself. What really happened that day? So, what exactly happened in Sirte on October 20th, 2011? The evidence suggests that Gaddafi's convoy was struck by NATO aircraft, forcing him to flee. He took shelter in a drainage pipe, where rebels discovered him. He was beaten, mocked, and humiliated. But instead of being taken into custody, he was executed. The chaotic footage was broadcast worldwide, but the exact moment of death remains unclear. Some rebels later admitted that they killed him deliberately. Others insisted it was spontaneous. International courts never pursued the matter. This ambiguity serves a purpose. It allows everyone involved, Libyan authorities, NATO, and foreign governments, to avoid responsibility. Conclusion. The story of Muammar Gaddafi is not just about the fall of a dictator. It is about the cost of regime change, the danger of foreign intervention without a plan, and the tragedy of a nation torn apart. Gaddafi's violent end was supposed to usher in democracy. Instead, it unleashed chaos that continues more than a decade later. For Libya, the question remains: was the death of Gaddafi the end of tyranny, or the beginning of something far worse? And for the world, one haunting question lingers. If Gaddafi had lived to stand trial, what secrets might have been revealed?